Hi everybody, I'm Brady Gaster and I'm going to start the day off here. So we're going to talk about choosing your own app modernization adventure with GitHub Copilot app modernization, kind of the star of the show for at least part of the day. I think we're going to be talking about some other stars of the show like Agent Framework, which is over here, et cetera, et cetera. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. So I like to work on tools, and one of the things that I've done over the years is to upgrade a lot of different applications, both my own and those that customers have brought me and asked me to help them with, to get them either upgraded so that they can get them into the cloud or make them more performant. In a lot of cases, they also wanted to upgrade different components that they were using. We'll talk about a little bit of that today. But the start of that was usually they wanted to upgrade their their framework version from version X to version Y. The interest in AI throughout our industry has really renewed interest in all of this app modernization stuff. Why is that? Because a lot of the old tech, a lot of the legacy tech, you can't connect it to AI. It's a lot more complicated to connect it to AI, and it might not perform up to snuff with where we need it to in terms of GPU performance and whatnot. So a lot of folks' first step in that modernization journey is actually bringing their app into the future, using a later version of their stack, using a later version of dotnet, which we'll see here in a moment, so that you can actually harness some of those newer SDKs and APIs that legacy apps can't deal with. At the same time, we've got a lot of different reasons why there's a lot of challenges for modernizing apps. The first one, obviously, the technology. The cost of increased technical debt, goes up all the time. This is something that we've talked to a lot of different CIOs about. We know that the costs are rising when it comes to them having to maintain these, legacy applications. When we talk about memory and footprints in a moment, you'll see one of the reasons why is probably the apps are expensive to just keep running. Second thing is going to be skills. I've been around in the .NET community for a really long time. We won't talk about it. I was looking for the visual iterative box earlier today to kind of put it up here as a prop. Got my old friend here instead. But the idea behind all these old apps is it's really hard to find people who, like me, know that old tech or who want to work on that old tech. Most people want to, continue to work on, the newer and the hotter tech. So it's really hard for folks to find people who have those skills and, want to continue to invest in those skills. Last part, resources. The developer focus. Devs want to move forward. So if you want to talk to a dev about, hey, I want to pay you the same amount of money to work on something exciting versus something, that you worked on for the last 20 years, they're probably going to take option A. Devs want to work on more exciting stuff. So we want to make it more exciting for you, and we want to make it easier for you to get from where you are to modern. Now, I guess the first question we want to ask is, why would you want to upgrade your app? Why would you want to upgrade your app from .NET X to .NET Y? In a lot of cases, you don't need to. In a lot of cases, you've got applications that are churning along just fine. I've got colleagues out there that still have classic ASP applications that they're maintaining. It's shocking, but they're still running just fine. They don't need to upgrade them. They're not getting any additional users. There might be internal apps, so they'll have the opportunity to move to things like app service managed instance, which we'll hear more about later on today. But in a lot of cases, you want to increase the performance of those applications for a myriad of reasons. You've seen this slide before. In 2023, I used this slide at Build to talk about, I think that was the .NET 8 upgrade we did at that point, and talking about cloud native. And this slide was specific to native AOT. But really, the message holds true for modernizing your apps today. Why would you want to do it? First rule, you want to have reduced size on disk. You want each instance of your application to run smaller. Why do you want it to run smaller? Because hopefully you're running it inside of a container and you've got 10, 20, 1,000 instances of your application running on one server. So that's the first reason, density. If you can make the application smaller, then it's probably going to be, you can get more instances running. Second thing is going to be in 2023 and with modern apps in general, that you're going to have faster startup times. So your application is going to go from not running to running in a very quick period of time. It's also going to run faster and use fewer resources. That's really important because you're going to pay for that startup and you're going to pay for that resource utilization. You pay for CPU and you pay for RAM when you're running in the cloud. That's something really important to think about when you're thinking about having your applications run up there, which is why you would want to upgrade your app. Let's talk about this in terms of numbers. So I've got a sample app that I'm going to use today. It's not a really complicated app, but I took the application up in Visual Studio, open it up, and I went ahead and I ran a series of steps, kind of the user scenario. It's a shopping cart app. You'll see me use it here in a moment. And the idea is I wanted to run this application under the profiler in 4.8.1, and then I wanted to upgrade the application to .NET 10 and rerun it under the profiler again and see what kind of difference we could get. There were lots of differences across the counters we won't go into today. But when I did take a look at the memory, you can see here that the process memory of the framework app was around 400 megs, and the process memory of the .NET 10 app was around 60 megs. What that tells you is that we basically had an 84% improvement in the application and got a 6%, over 6%, almost 7% more memory efficient app. That's what you get when you upgrade your app, and that's why we talk about upgrading your app, because we want you to be able to run more instances of your apps in the cloud. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about what that would look like. I'll go ahead and hit escape here and get over to my dev box. Now you saw me do this at .NET Conf during our wonderful keynote with Kathy, but the idea behind this application is I've got a front-end application that's a product catalog, and I've got a WCF service on the back end. No database yet, we're working on that, just got some static data for the moment. But if I run this, you'll see that I'm gonna fire up that WCF app, and then I'm gonna fire up that front-end app as well, because that front-end app needs to talk to that WCF app to run. It's gonna go ahead and spin up. You'll see here, I've got that WCF test client from back in the day running right here to show me that my WCF app is indeed running. And then you'll see here that I've got the product catalog running. So I'll hit add to cart, and you can see that as I add the items to the cart, you'll see that we're actually getting the items in the cart. If I were to go over here and do a checkout, you'll see that that's gone ahead and done a order submission. Now that order is going to get sent into a Microsoft message queue, again showing my age and the tech that I like to use back in the day. You'll see there's that first order that landed in our local queue. But what I want to do is I want to upgrade this to the later version of .NET. Now I'm not going to let this whole thing run, but the way I'll start the process is I'll right click on the solution and I'll select Modernize. You can do this at the solution level or at the project level, just to point out. You'll see that I have a few options over here. Upgrade to a newer version of .NET, the newest, the latest, the hottest, the 10. And then got the second one we'll talk about here in a moment called Migrate to Azure. We'll get to that one momentarily. I'm going to go ahead and select Upgrade to a newer version of .NET, and I'm going to click Enter down here. And what it's going to do is it's going to scan my application. It's going to figure out where I am and what kind of version I've got and what the topology of the application is going to be. And then it's going to walk me through the process of, kind of coming up with a plan. So the first step is going to be, it wants to go ahead and create a different branch for me. I've already got that branch ready. I'm going to tell it a different branch. I'm going to say change the branch to .NET 10 upgrade, because I've already got the name of that branch, and continue. And what it will do now is it will actually go ahead and create that new branch. Hopefully it'll name the branch for me. We'll see the main drop there because it's going to go ahead and do .NET 10 upgrade. You'll see down at the bottom it's created that branch for me here. And now it's actually going to do a little bit more analysis, and it's going to present me with essentially a markdown plan. That plan will actually give me an opportunity to kind of review and see what's going on, see what's actually going to happen. And I'm not going to run the plan right. Actually, I'll go ahead and hit continue. I'll let it continue for a moment. What it's going to do is it's actually going to upgrade this entire solution all the way through to .NET 10. Now I've already run this. Now there's the plan. There we go. It's already ahead and upgraded. It's popped open the plan in my Markdown editor. And what I can do is I can scroll through this. I could look in the preview mode if I wanted to, and I could actually see all of the steps that it wants to perform before I actually do those steps. And if I want to, I could actually change it. Now, just something to point out. I could go directly into this Markdown file if I want to, but I could also go right here into my chat and just say, hey, don't do this one thing that you're suggesting you're going to do this instead. So I could interact with Copilot here a little bit further if I wanted to and get that plan a little further along. Now, I'm not going to run the rest of this plan, but what I will do is I'll go over here to this app because I've already got it done. And I'm going to go here to my upgrade to .NET 10 branch. And I'll click on this button right here that says compare. And you can see we got 91 files changed, and if I were to scroll through them all, you'll see it does things like upgrading to the SDK style format. That's going to be the first step. It's going to update all of the WCF packages to use core WCF. In this case, we go ahead and do that for you, making the presumption that you want to stay on WCF, at least for now. Maybe move to something later, but in my case, I want to go ahead and stay on WCF for the moment and move to REST or something on later on. You might not want to. Core WCF might be your thing, and that's fine. It's going to walk through all the changes that we're going to make, talk about the changes to MSMQ, and roll right forward. And if I want to, I can do a pull request on both the plan. If I were to scroll down, then I could see all the code changes that it's going to make. If I wanted to set this up as a PR, I could go through, one of my devs could go through, and I actually do a really deep analysis of what Copilot has changed and make tweaks to it if I want to. That would be a recommendation I would make. Don't just take the AI's suggestions and go for it. Definitely do a little bit of massaging as well. But moving right along back to our presentation. One thing I do want to kind of talk a little bit more about is going to be the next set of steps in that app modernization journey. You'll see here that we've got a bunch of things on the screen. We're not just worried about a developer opening up an IDE, either Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, and doing this kind of onesie, twosie, project by project. We want to enable this across the entire ecosystem. So if you're using something like Dr. Migrate or Azure Migrate or Cast in public preview, you could actually snap that into this entire modernization journey. We're working on that entire end-to-end right now. Part of that step is going to be some of our Azure migration stuff. Now, why would you want to migrate to Azure? A couple of slides here. Obviously, you want to maximize your business agility. You're going to be able to respond a lot quicker. We'll talk a little bit today about the SRE agent. You would be able to use the SRE agent in our past to help figure out what's going wrong and fix it without having to wake somebody up at 2 in the morning. You're going to be able to unlock AI with unified data. You're going to have a lot more of a secure situation when it comes to going from code to cloud. A lot of the changes that we've made across our IDEs, a lot of the changes we've made across our services recently are going to make you more secure by default, and they're going to keep you secure as you party in the cloud. And then finally, best-in-class performance. You're not going to run faster than you are in Azure, especially when it comes to .NET. We have a lot of different opportunities for you to run your .NET applications, both on hardware, on VMs, and in a variety of container and PaaS models like app service, container apps, and so on. So let's talk a little bit about how you would do that with our migrate to Azure phase. So in this phase, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reopen that project, and we're going to take a peek at what it would take to migrate that app to Azure using all those same tools that we already have handy. And then I'm going to actually show you what it would look like to kind of go step by step in that journey. Let's go ahead and close this down, and I will flip back over to my dev box once again. Thanks to my wonderful friends in the DevBox team for making this so easy to kind of get rolling. So I'm going to actually close this solution down for now. I'm going to open a different one up, open a different project up, and we're going to grab this one right here. All right. And just because I've already done the different phases for each iteration of the project and the branches that I've got. Sorry about that. So I'm going to right-click this again. I'm going to select Modernize. In fact, what I'm going to do is right-click my entire solution again, select Modernize. And this time, we've already done this. We've upgraded it to .NET 10. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and click on Migrate to Azure. And I'm going to click on the next button down here. And what will happen now is that Visual Studio is going to use a lot of the existing AppCat tools that we already have. That's going to communicate with our LLM and kind of get a set of recommendations that it wants to make based on my application. Now it's going to pull up that assessment report for me here in 3, 2, 1, go. No, didn't work, sorry. It's going to pull up the assessment here in just a second. But what it's doing is, again, it's scanning through my code, but rather than thinking about how to upgrade the code to .NET 10, it's actually looking at opportunities based on my past offerings that it knows I want to deploy to in Azure. So it's gone ahead and defaulted me to Azure Kubernetes Linux, and Windows, Windows is supported for MSMQ. So if you go down here, migrate from MSMQ to Azure Service Bus, that's marked as mandatory because I'm not going to be able to run MSMQ on AKS and Linux. However, there are some geniuses out there who figured out how to run MSMQ on AKS and Windows. So if I change that option to AKS and Windows here, you'll see that this changes to potential. It is potential. You would need to do some work, but it is indeed potential. Now, I can also change this to any of our other offerings, App Service Windows, App Service Linux, and so forth and so on. For now, just click App Service Windows, and you'll see here I'm going to have to do that MSMQ to Service Bus is going to be mandatory. I would click that, and then what we would begin to see is that the migration agent would go ahead and start the process of figuring out how to change my code around so that instead of sending messages back and forth using the Windows-based MSMQ, I would be using the Azure Service Bus instead. Now, it will do that inside of a separate branch. So if I wanted to, do a PR on that branch, again, that's a recommendation, not just a what if. Always, do a review on your AI-generated code. What it's going to do now is it's actually going to inspect everything and kind of start making recommendations on how I would go up to Service Bus instead of using MSMQ. At that point, it would actually start changing all the libraries around and doing some of the other changes that I'm going to need to make and lean in on some other things around the Azure MCP tools if I need to actually do any provisioning and fire anything up. If I wanted to, I could click continue here, but it's already gone ahead and created my migration plan. This is not my upgrade plan. This is a totally separate plan. Pardon me. My upgrade plan was how to get from .NET 4X to get to .NET 10. This is really my plan to actually migrate my app up to Azure. All right, here you'll actually see a progress. And as I go through those individual steps and I run those migration tasks, let me hit keep here so we can get rid of the green. You'll see that I've got this checklist down at the bottom, and it will actually check through each one of those to-do list items as it performs all those migration tasks for me as we roll along. So this just kind of shows you how you as a developer, if you want to take your application forward and not only upgrade it to a later version of .NET, but then actually take it and take advantage of some of our great Azure service offerings. You have the tools directly inside of Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code to do all of that. But we want to take it a little bit further than that as soon as humanly possible. So I'm going to go just a little bit further and show some stuff that's not quite there yet, but we're getting it there as fast as possible. And that is our new GitHub Copilot app modernization, where we're going to be building autonomous workflows for modernization at scale. Now, what do all those words mean? Down at the bottom left, you'll see that we have a private preview. If you were to scan that QR code, you're going to get linked out to a form that you'll fill out. And essentially, that form will sign you up for a private preview where you would be able to try our app modernization agent. Currently, that app modernization runs very similarly to the product known as SpecKit when it comes to actually running a series of commands to kind of generate some specs and some plans, much like the tools that you saw in the IDE run to kind of make sure that you can edit the plan and make sure you know what's going to happen before it happens. But I do want to point out that one of the benefits of this is that we can actually run some of these commands back on the GitHub repository where your code lives. And that way you could actually set up multiple issues and start up multiple phases of your modernization journey and have them run simultaneously, hence the idea of it being at scale. Again, this is an extremely early preview. What I would recommend, and go back to the slide, Timothy NG, and my good buddy Scott Hunter did a presentation at Ignite a couple weeks ago. So you want to look up their presentation on app modernization. Timothy does a great series of videos of this app modernization agent, and he has a lot more coming. We're working together for even more exciting demos coming soon. But look up I think it's BRK 100 or 103. I can't remember which one it is, but it's with Scott Hunter and Timothy Eng, and they talk about the private preview of the GitHub Copilot app modernization agent quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in and do a demo that's not as good as the one that they did at Ignite, just because I'm very new to the tool, and kind of walk you through what it might look like as we get closer to done on that version of the product. I'm going to go ahead and keep and continue. Go ahead and close that down. So what I'll do now is I'll open up my command line. We won't stay in it too long. And what I'll show you is that I have the GitHub repo out over here. And I've got a couple of issues in it that I'm going to click on. And at one point, these were placeholder issues. So you'll see here, the first one was a placeholder to start the assessment and get all the assessment summary stuff up into GitHub so I could start to review it. The second issue that I created was a placeholder to convert from MSMQ to Service Bus. Now what I'll do is I'll flip over here, and I've got a version of the application downloaded. This is the .NET 4.8 version from the main branch that I've got running locally. And again, we're probably going to roll this up into the Copilot CLI. How it's going to ship remains to be seen. What you see here is just built on my machine and running on my machine, so forgive me. I'm going to go to app-mod-kit, and we're going to just call the init method. And what that's going to do is it's going to lay down a series of files. It's going to first ask me, do I want to do this using PowerShell? Yes. Or do I want to do it using Python? For me, I'll do this using PowerShell. I'll hit PowerShell first. Do I want to do .NET? It's found that it's a .NET app. I'm going to go ahead and pick .NET because it's not a Java app. We do have support for .NET and Java in this. Hunter and Timothy's sample or demo, they actually did this using Java. So I just want to show you that we do have that capability, and more languages are coming. Just we're not going to stop there. I'll go ahead and hit enter. You'll see that it's gone ahead and it's laid down a couple of files. Those files are going to be in my GitHub folder. And really what they are is going to be a series of steps that I can run. It's going to be the assessment step, the create plan step, and then the run plan step. So I'm going to go into Code Insiders now. Let's do Code Insiders right here on this folder. And I'm going to open this agent up a little bit window. And I had this all sessions up earlier, so I apologize for the all sessions window being there. I haven't figured out how to hide that window yet. But what I'll do now is I'll go over here and I'll just type app-mod, and you'll see app-mod-kit assess. I've got create plan, and I'll do run. Now, if I were to hit assess here, I could actually tell it I want you to assess based on the fact that I want to go to app service, or I want to go to AKS, or I want to go somewhere. I'm just going to leave it as it is. But when I did this originally, what I did was I went over to GitHub and I took this GitHub issue and I copied the link out and I pasted it. I pasted it right here so that when I ran this, it actually ran that assessment and it pumped all of the assessment stuff up into GitHub so that I could see what it was going to do before he did it, so I could actually assign that to the GitHub coding agent. Now, I'm not going to run it here. I'm just going to go ahead and click this. And you can see that that assessment summary, very similar to the one that you saw show up in Visual Studio, is now all lit up right here inside of an issue in GitHub that I could actually collaborate with somebody else on, work through, and get a little bit more detailed. And make sure I'm going in the right direction. And once I am and I'm comfortable and I want to actually start my journey, I can actually do that create plan, and I can say MSMQ to service bus or whatever the next step is. And what you'll see here is it's going to go ahead and tell me what that plan looks like. So this gives me the opportunity to now assign both of these to the GitHub Copilot coding agent so that they'll be running out there instead of running right here on my machine. I'm going to close this down, and I'm going to do one or two more slides for you before I hand it off to my good friends. The last thing here is going to be my calls to action slide. I want to thank you all for letting me be here. First one is going to be this provide feedback link on the left. If you're already using the tools and you want to give us feedback, we have a great survey where we're asking for feedback for you. Please be honest, please be candid, please be nice. And then the second one, we want you to try this preview out of this GitHub Copilot app modernization agent. So definitely try the preview and let us know what you think of that. And without further ado, I will get out of here.